Okay, so that's exciting, right? Next thing I want to show you is, okay, so let's get down to some basics. You get your store, and now you want to be able to maintain your store. You want to be able to change things up. Well, what I have is I have a full 3D CMS, which means content management system, for updating and changing your own websites. Now, to demo this, instead of pulling open the store already built and everything, I just want to show you how easy it is to work with some of these basics and actually create things. And you can create communities, buildings, or things. Remind you, communities are your 3D scenes. So that sets up the streets, the roads, the street signs, the trees outside, anything you want to do to decorate the scene. It could be the island, the water, the whatever it is. And then you have your buildings, which are going to be your 3D stores and also games and different things that people walk up on and can play when they go there or experience, like the 3D store that we just saw. And then 3D things are different items that we can place inside of our 3D stores. So if I have a 3D thing that is a table, for example, I can drop a table inside my store. I can put some chairs around it. I can have a 3D object. So like you saw where those were the pictures of the items, I can actually build the item in 3D and then drop it in my store, and when people walk in, they see the item and can walk around it and interact with it. So the whole idea is to make it fully interactive and fully 3D. Okay, so I have my building. First thing I want to show you is that we can come in here to edit building, and first level is these are different building blocks that we can add. So we have things like a wall, a floor, a box, a rounded box, cylinders, half pipe, cone, sphere, dome, triangles, and polygons, and all kinds of good fun stuff here that you can use. I'm going to start with something simple. I'm going to go with a sphere. And notice as soon as I click the button, two things happen. First of all, in your scene, you see a sphere. Now, another thing I want to show you real quick is down on the bottom left here, we have quick editor settings. One of these such settings, I'll show you some of them at different times, but one of them in particular is avatar camera off, is on right now, and I'm going to click that button. Now what it does is it allows me to separate my camera walking around and looking at things from the avatar's perspective of the things you're looking at. So as I'm building things, it makes it really easy to move around, look at it from different angles, jump in there and view it from all different sides, adjust it, move it, whatever you have to do. We also have these guidelines on the object. Another item down here is you can turn off and on the guidelines as you're working with it. That way, if they're in the way of seeing something, let's say it's a small object, you can turn them off, adjust it, turn them on when you want to line things, and you can kind of adjust it as you go. Okay, also this is a demo day, so as I'm doing this, if you have anything you want to say, chat it up, type it in there, and I'll be watching closely on that today and answering your questions as we go. Also, just so you know, Mondays, today right now, we're doing a demo and a Q&A. If you want to watch me actually code and build the product, we're building 3D open source internet, so anybody can host a part of the 3D internet. So if you want to watch me code it and get the product ready and be ready for release, then make sure you click follow so that you can always know when I'm online and coding, because I code at all hours of day and night, and I'm always jumping on and offline and showing you where I'm at the time. So continuing on. Okay, so next we have this object in the screen. We've placed a sphere there. Notice the first thing I can do is I can hold down left, right, I can make it move in all 3 dimensions anywhere that I want to put this sphere. I can also up or down and place it wherever I want it to be. I can also size it in 3 dimensions. Well, of course, if I show you a dimension that I'm not looking down, it's easier to see that it moved. So let's go this way, and I can also, let's go narrower, taller. See, we have full control over the size of the object we're working with. The next thing is, let me go taller just so you can kind of really see what I'm doing here. Notice it can go down into the ground, no problem there. We can also raise it up if we want to. The next part is rotation. You have 3 axes of rotation. of rotation to be proper. And of course you can turn it and go. Okay, and I'm going to raise it up just a little bit higher because I kind of want to show you. The first thing is covering type. Now, for those of you that have programmed and worked with meshes and stuff, when I call these molds, the reason is because I'm wrapping it in a bunch of different information based on 3D browsing. So I take the mesh and I wrap it with additional data so that I can still determine between the mesh, which is the raw object that you're seeing on the screen, just like the gaming engine replies to, but then the mold is all the details of what it's going to include, when it's going to include it, when it's going to show it on a screen, when it's not, how it's going to pass the information back and forth, preloading objects before they actually need to be loaded, unloading things that are no longer in your range of walking, which we're going to get to shortly, but also all this information is the mold. Well, then on top of the mold, when you work with meshes and you do programming, a mesh is basically an object. So a sphere in this case, a box, a rectangle, whatever it is, it's a three-dimensional object. Okay, and can be two-dimensional, it can be, well, it can be two-dimensional or one-dimensional. It can be a line, it can be a plane, and it can also be a dot on the screen, so 1 pixel. So, okay, back to where I was going. So when you work with these objects, what they do is you can put materials onto the object. So right now it has a material that is a color, and I can set that various color. And in this case, what I call a covering is not just the cover, not just the material, but it's all the properties I've added to it above and beyond that. So if I've told it to cast a shadow or not, if I've told it to have a reflection in water, if I've told it to, there's a number of things I've told it to do. If I've applied an animation, that may be part of the coloring. There's procedural textures, so like if it's a water surface or a fire surface. So there's different things that I've wrapped all up into, and I call it coverings because it's a step above and beyond the normal materials. It's a bunch of different other settings that they allow you to do in the code. So, first things first, there's 3 different color settings. And notice that when I set this color, for example red, it's the top half of this egg sphere. And that is the luminescent color, the color that's actually coming, on the part that's being hit by the sun or lighting. Now, the second one is the dot on the sphere. So notice how when I told it to be yellow, that dot on the sphere, that's the sunspot. That's the direction that your light source, for example the sun, is hitting the object you're working with. And this tells it which color to be. So I can make that any color I want. See how I can just adjust it to, I can go all the way around this outside area and pick the color I want it to be, and then I can pick the darkness or shadowing of it to be from perfectly white in the top left corner, perfectly black in the bottom right corner, which pretty much gets rid of it, or a shade of the top right or the bottom left. You can pick whatever grayscale color you want it to be, but you get to pick which color by going around the outer circle, and all I'm doing is holding down the mouse. It also works with touchscreen. Okay, so that's the sunspot, and if you haven't guessed, notice the bottom of the sphere hasn't really changed. This is the core color of the actual sphere, which notice even the top half does get influenced by this. So if I make this, for example, I'm going to pick blue, just because you can see when blue and red mix, we're seeing the top half with this being a true strong color. And we can back it off or make it whatever shade that we want it to be. Okay, so we're actually blending 3 different colors, 3 different ways to create any one color on an object. Now the next thing is, beyond doing just coloring objects, we have some other options. For example, I can come in here, instead of color, I can say I want a texture on this. Well, the first thing it did, if we look really closely, notice there is an applied texture. I start with a simple one, but it's also a mix of the texture, which in this case happens to be a white image, and the color that you pick. So the two blend together to actually set what you're doing. So we are still using colors even when you set a texture. Now if you want it to be just the raw texture, all you have to do is move all the colors to the top left corner. They become pure white. Now the full texture will show through. When I click on Change Texture, I'm opening up my media library. I can look from here I can look on building images and it'll show me any image that I've already used in this building. I can click on my images and it'll be anything that I've uploaded to add. And these can be textures, they can be pictures of something, whatever you want them to be. And you can upload the image and then it'll show up on this list and then you click on it to add it. Or I've included a bunch of stock images just so that you have something to work with when you first start. In this case, I'm going to pick something simple. Let's see. I want to be able to show some color through it, so I'm going to pick this. Now notice, if I come over here and set these, notice I am still applying the different colors that I choose, because over here on the left you see that the image itself is more of a tan, so it is still fully applying whatever colors I set on the left, including this sunspot here, right there. Okay, so it is a blend. Notice all the lines and the texture from the actual object. Without doing it right now, I want you to know that I can also add what we call a bump texture. Bump textures are used to match the pattern of the texture you're using, but at the same time they help set different lighting patterns of the way it hits so that it brings additional life to it. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to fly without a net. Remember, this is a beta test, so we're going to try one of those just to see if it works or not for today. And I'm going to choose this texture, which, notice how it looks. Okay, that's interesting enough. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, let's add the bump texture to it. And under that same texture, there was this one, but then I have this image, which looks kind of purple and black. And that image, now look what it's actually done to the process. Look what the eggshell, the egg or whatever we're creating here looks like. Notice as I move around, notice how it has little white glitter on the edges. It catches some light. The blacks are more depth to them. The edges here of the color areas actually look like they stand out. This is a way that we can create things that actually have a depth to them just by using two images. So notice that's this base image and this image added to it. And then now in this case, we've applied color to it. Now, if I wanted to show more of the original color, I just go to the top left for the white, or I can pick whatever shadow or color I want it to be. But notice it still takes on the bump map, which is this guy, the purple and black. And that helps with the highlighting. So we get this little edges, helps with shadowing, and it casts the shadows to make each part of it stand out and look like it's in 3D. Later on, I'll show you a cobblestone street that I use this technique on. Okay, but did you notice how easy it was to create that? I said, I need a sphere. I'm going to size it this way. I'm going to put it this place. And now I change the coloring to texture, and I just clicked a couple things, and it's ready to go. So that's as easy as it is to actually create objects for 3D browsing. And I can save that sphere. Now, another thing I can do is I'm going to show you on a cube object because there's a couple things I want to show you with doing this. So I'm going to build a box. I'm going to, let's make it a little bit bigger just to do it. Okay, and we're going to make it a little bit taller, and I'm going to lower it just a touch. Now I'm going to put a texture on this box. There's two different types of textures. I'm going to start with texture just like we did the egg to begin with. And in this case, I'm going to change the texture, and I'm going to pick something that is directional. For example, bricks. If I put bricks on the page, what's going to happen is there's bricks, the pattern of the brick goes this way. So you come in here and you say, okay, here's a block wall, for example. Well, notice what just happened. The side on the right looks correct. That's my block wall. But then this side in front of me is actually vertical instead of horizontal. So what I did was I created a second version of that called directional texture, where now when you click that one, it picks up and says, okay, all around the sides, I need it to be a certain texture. I need it to stay horizontal. And on the top and bottom, I need those ends to match. So if I took this right now and I rotate it downwards so you can see the top of it. Okay, so the top of it is facing towards the egg. Let's say it points to the egg this way. If I walk around it, or even just We're going to shoot through it real quick, go to this side of it and rotate back around. Notice the bottom side is also facing the eggs. So those two sides match, and then the 4 other sides are all running horizontal. Now just to do it, I'm going to, let me back that back down just so we're kind of looking at the different sides. Notice another thing that happened with my image. When we look at this horizontally, notice that the edges do not match up. This one has it right here, this one is right here. The bricks don't look complete, they don't look in place. Well, what I've done is I've added additional Show Advanced Options section. You open that up, and now you can come in here, and the section it has that I'm looking for, there it is, Mold Texture Adjustment. You can change the dynamics, length and width, and you can also change the height and width offsets. So if I come in here and bump this a little bit, notice it's starting to move the pattern. Well, in this case it's up and down. Okay. The other way is you can move this and it'll rotate it right and left. So I may want it to be where the fold is right in the center or something. The other one that you can do is, okay, first of all, just so you know, 0 defaults to 1, and a 1-to-1 is by default what you get when you create a box. Okay, so when I can shrink it, and now I'm getting it more that direction. I can also shrink the width this way, and notice how at some point in time these two cross each other. And now look, when I'm right there, for example, let's go a little bit more, almost there. If you notice near the bottom, you're actually getting closer. Well, you can adjust it, and you can find where they look like they're lining up. Another thing to do is, if your dimensions are the same, then they come up perfect. So, for example, if I have a 10 by 10 box, 10 by 10 by 20, so it's all dimensionally straight. And then I come in here and I set the pattern to 1 and 1, and offset is 0. Offset 0. Okay, beta testing, but actually it's off by a half. Okay, I'll work on that. Actually, that's the 20 part. Let's go back to it just to show you that it does have some rhyme or reason to the dimensions. Okay, and we should have had something close. Okay, but you'll notice they're all going horizontally all the way around as it goes, and it does give some type of rhyme or reason to the way it does it. And you can size, so if you wanted it to be half the number of bricks, or there we go, now it bounced into place. 2 by 2, for example, for the size that we're using. It has to do with the original size image. It has to do with the painting on the sides, and notice that all the bricks line up. Now it looks like continuous real bricks that go all the way around corners. So it had to do with making these the same size and, you know, a couple different dimension things. Okay, so, and you can change the offset so that, for example, let's say when you first put it on there, you got like a half a brick on the top. You can actually adjust it. Oops, wrong adjustment. And you can set it so that everything runs right where you want it to, right on the edges. You have those fine-tuning abilities. This comes in really handy. Let's say I was building a room, and on the ceiling I have ceiling tiles. But let's say there's 2 pieces of tile that I put next to each other. I can actually line up the lines in the actual tile so that they come out perfect where the seams are. So there's some stuff like that you can do fine-tuning and adjusting. I'll get into merge shapes on a later date. They're kind of cool. I can create an object and actually cut it out of another object or combine them into one. So there's a couple different things you can do with this. So that's a little bit of tutorial on that. Now there's one more part before I move on that I'm going to show you,